Hello, and welcome to Ending Physician Overwhelm. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Mello. I'm a family and obesity medicine physician, as well as a certified life coach for physicians. In this podcast, we talk about how the learned habits of people-pleasing, perfectionism, and a lack of boundaries show up in our lives and how they contribute to burnout, exhaustion, and overwhelm. The healthcare system is broken, my friends, but let's not wait for it to be fixed in order to feel better.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Ending Physician Overwhelm. This is episode 117, and I'm calling it self-doubt. I think that most of our patients would be shocked to learn how many physicians are just drowning in self-doubt. And this is one of the top questions that I get asked when I'm coaching women physicians one-on-one is, am I the only one? Is it just me? Am I the only physician who struggles with this? And hear me please, loud and clear. You are not alone. I know you're not alone, even if I haven't, included the experiences of so many of my physician clients, because of course I am a physician who experiences self-doubt. We all have self-doubt to different degrees. And what I really want to dive into here and now is to normalize what people experience. And, I have the privilege of speaking of the experience of so many physicians who have coached with me. So, I'll share, kind of the flavor of those stories. But I want you to really hear me say that you are not alone if you experience this, and nothing is wrong with you. You are not broken. This is certainly something that we can work on. We can improve it. The women physicians who coach with me really improve in terms of their self-doubt by introducing our tools of self-compassion, by learning that they're not alone, that they're not broken, that their conditioned ways of thinking have led to this crippling self-doubt. We really break through a lot of this. And I don't want to make any promises. I still have moments of doubt, of course, because I am human, right? And when we've had a lot of experiences that trigger self-doubt in us because of our upbringing, because of how we've been socialized, of course those thoughts are still going to be there. But our ability to recognize those thoughts for just thoughts, they're just things that come up, and I can make a different choice here, so empowering, right? It really allows people to, access their own agency in such a different way. So that's why I really wanted to come and bring this conversation to you today. So let me talk about a few instances where self-doubt creeps in, and let me see what resonates for you. Of course, we do hard work, right? I'm family medicine and, obesity medicine on the side. So I see, as a primary care physician, I see so much undifferentiated disease, right? People come in, they've got a rash, they've got a bump, they've got this pain going on. We don't know what it is. They've, of course, been on Dr. Google, right? And learned that it's either cancer or it's this obscure rash that I've never heard of. There is so much uncertainty in undifferentiated disease, and part of our job, if you're a primary care physician or somebody who works in an urgent care setting, right, kind of that first line of treatment for people, is trying to figure out, is this dangerous or is this not dangerous, right? But this creates so much self-doubt. And medicine is intrinsically very tricky in that way, because people come to us, right, with all kinds of things going on. They are messy in their presentations. Their things don't present in ways that are clean cut and according to the book, right? Their rash did not read the book on what, herpes metaformic, I can't even say it, what that's supposed to look like, or how it's supposed to feel for a person. Not all the diseases read all the books, right? They just don't. Medicine is also incredibly litigious. And even if we're not talking about lawsuits, none of us likes to make a wrong call. And again, especially with complicated or undifferentiated disease where we don't know what's going on yet, it is so normal for self-doubt to sometimes become crippling, right? Because it's not just that we don't know how to solve a problem, it's that we don't know how serious this is, or we don't know what direction the natural course is going to take. And we know that there are very real consequences of missing stuff, right? We hear those stories all the time. Well, last week I had this, this weird lump on my chest and it was kind of in my breast, and my friends, I just had 3 friends who were diagnosed with breast cancer, right? And that's the story that they're coming in with you. And immediately in your mind, it is, oh no, I got to make sure that this is not breast cancer, even though the thing is gone. The thing is gone. There is no evidence of it. There is no lump. There is no mass. But all of a sudden, we are left with the story of needing to rule out breast cancer in a lump that does not exist, right? The stories that we hear of things that were missed, things that were mistakes, lawsuits that happened, right, are crippling to us. And they contribute to, for many people, this clinical decision-making self-doubt, right, where we doubt our abilities because we have stories in our head of other people or past experiences where things have been missed. The diagnosis wasn't correct, the treatment wasn't correct, the person didn't respond to it, there was a lawsuit. There are all sorts of layers of stories. Now, not only is that going on, but we also have just teensy little bits of time, right, in order to be able to decide what to do next to figure this out, right? And again, if you're in primary care, nothing stops your patient coming in with a list of 15 things they want evaluated right now. So that's a different trick, right? That's a different tactic. But I just want to highlight that your anxiety about getting through their list, right, and making them happy and getting the Press-Ganey scores and the HEDIS measures and all the things that are on your list of things to do adds to the stress you experience when you are having trouble with clinical decision making, when there's diagnostic uncertainty, and all of this contributes to self-doubt. It is very real. And of course, we all know about scary consequences, either medically or legally or, interpersonally. Like, all of those things exist. But I also want to highlight for people that diagnostic uncertainty is just a fact of life. And we often have a story in our head that there is one right answer. There is one right diagnosis. There is one right treatment. And we panic when we don't know what those things are, right? It creates more self-doubt, more lack of self-confidence. We lose the ability to have confidence in ourselves to help figure it out, right? If I can't tell what this rash is, I have agency to take a biopsy, put in a referral, to try a cream. I can do all of these different things, but if I'm crippled in self-doubt, I might not do anything, right? Or I might throw all of the things at it and then not know what worked. We need to be able to recognize the elements of self-doubt that pop up to be able to settle ourselves, right? And decide on a path forward, right? We cannot stay stuck in self-doubt. When we stay stuck in self-doubt, we don't take action, or we become hyper-vigilant. We throw too many things, or we throw too many things at the problem. We add confusion. People often don't finish their notes because they feel like they need to do an hour or 2 of research in order to, not appear in their note that they don't know what's going on. There is a lot of chaos and drama that happens in the minds of physicians when there is clinical decision-making self-doubt. We also exist, as I touched on, in a world with, HEDIS metrics and other scores that also make us believe that there is one right answer, one right path, and that all of our patients will comply with the things that we ask them to do just because we told them to do it, right? So when your patient who has diabetes comes in and they are not taking their ACE inhibitor and they're not changing their diet, right? We are led to believe that that is our fault, right? And we doubt our abilities to be able to do it. But the reality is that those adults are adults. They have the ability to decide for themselves whether or not they are going to treat their own disease. But this adds to self-doubt when you are sitting there feeling fully responsible for the decisions that they are making. I'm assuming that this is a competent person. Yes, I will speak from the position of people who are privileged enough to be able to have insurance coverage, to be able to access the kind of care that they need, right? They can get the blood test, they can, pick up the medicine without having to worry about paying rent, and still they choose not to do it. We could go down a rabbit hole and talk about the people who don't have that, but I want to stay focused here because most of our patients are in circumstances where they have access to medications, they have access of some kind to healthy food, they have access to some kind of exercise, and they aren't doing it, and we feel like we are wrong because we have not been able to make them do it, right? You can see how that adds to self-doubt, right? We feel very ineffective, even though we are dismissing that person in front of us is making their own choices for their health. Now, of course, there is also this issue of access. What do people have access to, and how that impairs our, ability to trust ourselves. We've got, issues where specialists are booked out, a year, and you've got somebody with something going on with their heart, and you don't know what it is, and you can't put them on the treadmill, and you can't do a cath, and you don't know exactly what's going on, and you are trying to do the very best that you can, and you're worried about it, and you're probably feeling like you should do more. When we have very imperfect access to the tools and resources that we really need to take care of people, again, whether that's, because insurance or because staffing shortages or, specialties that are booked out, I want to acknowledge that there is moral injury here. So again, we're assuming that the people themselves, are not able to access the kind of care that they need, and they are here in front of you, and you are worried because you don't have the ability to do a cath and find out if they actually have a blockage, right? If they actually are having angina, if they are actually having cardiac ischemia. You feel probably a lot of things, but there's some doubt in there because you aren't sure what to do. Do you need to send them to the emergency room? Do you need to start them on X, Y, and Z thing because of the access issue? That adds to your self-doubt. And again, there's probably other emotions and there's other things going on, and there's moral injury, right? Because you are pretty clear on, kind of what the next steps would be in a perfect world and what you would do, from there on, but you don't have access to that. And so you are doubting your ability to care for that person. And again, there's moral injury there, right? You wish you could do better, but you are actually not capable. You cannot get into their arteries and clean them out, right? It's a really hard issue, but I see a lot of this where physicians are out there blaming themselves for not having better patient outcomes when the things are outside of that physician's care. It's either outside of their scope of practice, appropriately so. There's resources that, would benefit the patient that for whatever reason we don't have access to. The patient decided that they wouldn't follow through, or maybe they didn't decide, but they also didn't decide to start the treatment, right? Or, sometimes we have patients who just don't trust us, right? They have a strong mistrust of the medical system. They come in, you go through all the things, you explain why you're concerned. They do not trust you, they do not believe you, usually for reasons that have nothing to do with you. It has to do with the kind of day they're having. It has to do with their past experiences. But it leads you to doubt yourself, even though this is something that's going on in their minds. So many places where this pops up, and I really want us to understand the impact that has, because when you're swimming in that emotional soup of self-doubt, it is very hard to get hard things done. is very hard to get our work done, and it's very hard to get our notes done. Again, people leave notes open for days and days and days because they feel like they need to research, or they need to call someone, they need to do all these things, and it just drags it out, right? And that weighs very heavily on us, and it adds to, the cognitive burden that we drag around and the emotional burden that we drag around when we do our work. And all of those things matter when we're talking about how our lives feel, right? When we're talking about overwhelm, when we're talking about burnout. Don't dismiss how self-doubt is affecting you. Okay, I'm gonna bring myself down here. Let's talk about self-doubt and all the administrative tasks. And I'm labeling anything that's not related to a patient who's here in front of you as an administrative task. So completing our notes, right? Getting through our inbox work, answering questions for, staff and situations that pop up. So many of the people that I talk to think that they are the only ones who struggle with getting these things done. They look at their colleagues who, seem fine, seem to just be, on the computers, just banging out notes and, kind of getting all their stuff done. And meanwhile, the physician is sitting there struggling and thinking, why am I having such a hard time doing this? There's something wrong with me. I can't get this done. And, and thinking, again, that it's just totally easy and straightforward for everybody else, and that there's something wrong with them. And when you're having that train of thought, it's actually that much harder to actually get anything done, right? Because you're swimming in that emotional soup, and that emotional soup of self-doubt and uncertainty and feeling inadequate does not produce the actions of getting stuff done, right? It creates procrastination. It creates overworking, right? And not feeling like it's good enough. And so not pressing complete, not sending the bill, not signing the note, as though there's so much finiteness of that you can't go back and addend something, that you can't add a detail, that you can't research something and come back to that patient's chart and add a note somewhere, of like what you're going to try next if the initial stuff doesn't work or if the lab comes back a certain way. This self-doubt weighs super heavy on us, and it drags out these administrative tasks to no end. And so, yes, of course, that's interrelated to the clinical decision making, but it has a huge impact on us. And compare that to feeling that I have done what I could today with the information that I had, right? With the exam that I was able to access for the patient, with any tests that I was able to access, or I've got some tests ordered, right, that are cooking, with the information the patient shared, right? How often, when you were a resident, would you, collect, or a student, right, you kind of collect the story from the patient, you do your exam, you go out and get your attending, and you present to them and you say, this is what I think is going on. Both of you go back into that patient's room, and the patient says, oh, by the way, I am having fevers with this headache. I hadn't really thought about it, but I've been hot and sweaty and having chills, and that completely changes the differential, right? We have experience with self-doubt creeping in from our training, right? We didn't know what the hell was going on. So much experience with that. And because we were judged as students, because we were judged as residents, in particular, if we had a burned out team supervising us, right, we may interpret self-doubt and, thoughts of, I'm not sure if this is right. I'm not sure if I should have done something more. We interpret all those thoughts as failures. And again, we end up dragging out our work and not getting stuff done. It is such a common theme. I wish I could impress upon you the number of people who tell me these stories. We cannot keep going with this. We need to come to a place where we recognize I am well trained. I am a problem solver. I am putting together a puzzle and I don't have all the pieces yet. But pay attention here. I trust myself to figure it out. If I'm not going to be the one who diagnoses the condition because that's outside of my scope, I'm going to help figure out how to get the person to the right care that they need, right? Again, my primary care people, they know how often this happens. The patient comes in with, chest pain that they think is an outpatient concern, and meanwhile they're sweaty and they're pale and they're diaphoretic and they're like, I don't feel good. And you're like, yeah, you're going to the emergency room. I don't want to go to the emergency room. Can't you just give me something? No. No, I can't. But it takes confidence. It takes trust. It takes knowing what you know, which is that there are scary things that person in front of you could be having, and you aren't going to sit there and be nice about it and throw an antibiotic at it, right? Okay, I'm going to stop myself from telling the story there, but you need to trust yourself that if there's something scary going on, if there's something you can't rule out, that in those circumstances, right, that you're going to get somebody the extra care that they need. But you also need to rely on the fact that with undifferentiated disease, you don't know exactly what's going on. You don't know exactly what the right treatment course is because people are messy, and what you have access to is imperfect. Absolutely. That we trust ourselves to start with this plan here today, to document that, to trust that we are doing the best we can with what we know, and to move on. We have to do this. We have to start to cultivate that trust in ourselves that I don't know the answer today. I'm not sure what's going on, and I trust myself to move on. I will communicate to the patient if X, Y, or Z thing happens. You need to go. I will communicate to them, I'm really worried about this thing. We are going to do this and this. If you feel worse, you need to, whatever the instruction is. Trust your gut. Trust yourself to figure it out. Do the best that you can with what you know here and there, and know that that is enough. Your note is not going to be perfect. Your note is not going to contain all of the possibilities, right? But this is where we are starting. Again, this is really pertinent to undifferentiated disease, but of course it comes up with other things. It comes up with chronic disease. It comes up with the ear infection or the sore throat. It comes up all the time for us. We don't know what the future holds, and we need to not stay crippled in self-doubt, right? We need to move forward. A third place where this comes up, and this is a really important one, and this is something that we do a lot of work with in my coaching practice, is self-doubt when it comes to being able to give yourself permission to do something or to not do something. This is a much softer topic, but it's really, really important. I was talking recently with a fellow family medicine physician, and she is lifestyle medicine trained. She really, really has a love of, teaching lifestyle changes to help manage chronic disease, and she's excellent at it. But you cannot do that very well in a 15-minute appointment bucket in, an insurance model that requires you to see a certain number of people per day, right? Patients have their things that they need to get taken care of. You have to order, X, Y, and Z tests, right? They're due for refills, right? There are things that take up that 15 minutes that don't allow you the luxury of having the 30-minute heart-to-heart conversation where you help move them along the path of eating a more plant-based diet, for example. When you are working in a circumstance where the idea of what you have in your mind of how you would like to take care of yourself is, a beautiful 30-minute appointment where you can just focus on that counseling, which is really important and helpful and something that would tremendously benefit our patients. Don't get me wrong here. But what you are given is no nursing staff, a 15-minute appointment, and 13 preventative care and chronic disease management, little check boxes that you need to do, and they need a refill, and here's this form to fill out. There is a huge mismatch there in the time, what is done during that visit, right? It does not work to constantly be adding in these long, totally appropriate discussions, right, on what would help that person. But when it's so fixed in your mind that this is the only way that I do a good job here, and what you have is, again, this very tight insurance model bucket of like, we need to hit this, this, and this today, right? Or else we aren't getting paid and blah, blah, blah. We have to give ourselves permission to change the way we think about what is right, to change the way that we think about how we're going to operate within that system. Now, of course, we also can give ourselves permission to no longer play in that sandbox, right? We can leave that position. We can decide we aren't going to take insurance and go elsewhere. We can create our own practice, right? There are lots and lots and lots of ways to solve that particular problem. But while you are in this system over here that tells you that you need to provide care in this way, you are going to need to settle this in your mind of, I give myself permission to meet the boxes here and to get through my day because of the way that they've handed me things, and figure out for yourself, how do I want to make changes for the future, right? If I want to stay in that practice and I want to stay in that insurance model, how can I help my patients get some of that important information, even if I'm not going to be able to do it at the time of the visit, right? If it's really important to you, let's say you work in a community health center and you feel like you're so committed to the mission of working in a community health center that you want to stay and do that work, then you're going to need to give yourself permission to find some other way to help communicate to your patients, whether that's a nice handout or a video that you've made for them or something else, so that they have access to the information, but you are staying on time. Now, not everyone's going to want to make that compromise, but a lot of self-doubt will play into that of, well, this is the only way that I can take care of patients, that feels right, and I don't really think I can cut that down. You have to give yourself permission to be on your own list, to prioritize your health and well-being, because if you are spending 30 and 40 minutes with your patients and you've got 15-minute appointment slots and X number of people to see in a day, all of that extra time that you spend comes out of you. And it doesn't get a thank you note later, right? Yes, you might have patients who love you. Yes, you might have patients who are really grateful and they say things like, you're the best doctor I've ever seen, and no one has ever told me this. Why haven't I heard this before? Like you've gotten all sorts of reinforcements, right, that keep you acting in that way. But there is no scenario where you will not be drowning in too much work when you do that. And again, you have permission to decide, I'm not going to play in the sandbox anymore. I'm not going to be in a place where I have to do these 15-minute visits and I can't talk to my patients about these things that are important. You have permission. You can give yourself permission to decide you're going to go do something else. But when you work for an employer who dictates that care is done in a certain way, right, that really wants to widgetize, we can't live in this place where we think this is the only right way, where I spend 30 to 40 minutes talking to my patients and, I have to keep on this 15-minute cadence. It doesn't work. The math does not work there. There is often self-doubt sitting there of feeling like I can't do this any other way, but the math just doesn't work. And you might think, I'm not a good doctor if I don't provide care in the way that I want. And so it keeps you doing this overwork. Hear me when I say, you are a great physician. You are a caring person who wants to do all the right things, and the insurance model set up, or kind of whatever the system is that's dictating that you do things in a certain way, does not pay for your time to be used in that way. It is absolutely a beautiful way to provide care, and you can figure out other pathways, as I mentioned, a few different options. But let's stop fighting the reality that in these employed insurance-based buckets, we can't keep over giving, because that does not work. It is us trying to make up for the shortcomings of the system, us trying to make up for the fact that health insurance is a business, that these employers are a business, right? And that they have profit margins and shareholders and all those things. It is sucking the life out of so many physicians because they are stuck in this very beautiful and appropriate belief that we should provide care in a certain way. I don't want to minimize that, and I don't want to say that you're wrong, because you're not wrong. You have a way that you would like to take care of people. What I am saying, though, is that often is not in alignment with what we have been told we need to do, again, in this very sort of, checkbox kind of medicine environment that so many of us are in. Crippling self-doubt then becomes the problem, because you feel like you are doing something wrong, or you're not doing something well enough, that you can't fit all of that wonderful counseling and all of that wonderful care into these tiny buckets of time. There's nothing wrong with you. You aren't ineffective. You aren't inefficient. It's just not possible. The math just doesn't work. But again, you can see where this really contributes to our sense of self-doubt, because we blame ourselves for not being able to get it done. There is so much here. And I hope that if you're listening and this is resonating with you and you're like, oh, me, oh, yes, oh, I felt that, oh, this is something that I struggle with. Again, I want you to recognize you are not alone. You are not broken. This is not because you're a problem. This is not because you're not smart enough. There are just so many things that we face that we are not able to practice in a way always that would help us to feel more confident, right? We don't have perfect access to, the diagnostic tool, right? That we can just wave from head to toe and be like, oh, yes, you have a 97% blockage in your right main coronary. We need to get you to the hospital. We don't have that device. We don't know if that person's toe pain is gout or just a stubbed toe, right? There's so many things. Medicine is riddled with uncertainty. And so many of us have come to fear that when we are uncertain, it's because there's a problem with us. We aren't smart enough, we aren't efficient enough. Somebody didn't realize that we weren't worthy to work here, that we weren't good enough, that we weren't a great enough doctor. There's so much self-doubt that's out there. And especially amongst women physicians who are people's favorite doctors. You're the best doctor I've ever seen. That person, I can almost guarantee you, has a lot of self-doubt. And every time they hear a patient say something nice like that, it reinforces, all of this, oh, I don't know what's going on inside my head. Oh, you don't see my inbox and how overcrowded it is. Oh, you don't know how I cringe when you say that, because it makes me think that the only way I can be a good physician is to spend 40 minutes when we've got 15 minutes to spend. These are such common themes, and it's really belief work that we need to do on our own. Our systems are not going to help us with this. Medical training as it is not helping with this. We need to learn to trust that we have the knowledge and skills to figure out a next step, to know that we are never going to be 100% right the first time, to know that we are doing the best with what we can, what we've got, with the resources and the tools that we have. We are doing the best we can with what we know. You are enough. Self-doubt is an emotion that stops us, it cripples us, it slows us down, right? It drags us. The cognitive and emotional burden of carrying around this message of I'm not good enough, I'm not doing a good enough job, And it keeps us overworking. It keeps us overwhelmed. It keeps us not being present with our families. It, keeps us staying late hours and, spending hours researching down a rabbit hole for things. And trying to figure it all out, and we just can't do it. We just can't do it. We can't live our lives that way. Even if you don't walk out of this conversation feeling like you have perfect confidence in yourself, I want you to really start to develop what we call self-confidence. And self-confidence is the idea of, I don't have to know or have encountered this exact situation before to trust myself that I can figure out a next step. I trust myself, I have my own back, that I will do the best with what I have, with what I know at this time, and then I will move on to the next room. I trust that I will take care of myself, that I will address the situation if something has gone wrong, if there's a mistake, if there's an adverse reaction. I trust myself that if I get new information, I'll deal with it. But I'm not going to stay dwelling in self-doubt, because that's a toxic soup to swim in. You matter. And the messages that we tell ourselves matter, because they have a real impact on our emotional state, which influences our actions, right? If you've listened to me before talk about, the thought model, our thoughts, whether we're aware of them or not, right? Conscious or subconscious thoughts create our feelings, our emotions, which drive our actions, right? So if I'm swimming in the emotion of self-doubt because of the things I'm telling myself, you don't know enough here, you don't know exactly what's going on, what if you mess this up, what if this is serious? When you stay in that place of self-doubt, it makes every action harder to wrap up the visit, harder to do your notes, harder to deal with your inbox, harder to get your tasks done and get home, right? Harder to be present with your family, harder to shut down your brain, when you do go home, so that you can go and be human for a while instead of being constantly at work in your head. It's so rewarding to me to do this work with physicians, to normalize the playing field and tell you that you are not alone if you experience this. And I wish that I knew about this work so much longer ago for my own sake, right? Because this was me. And again, I'm not going to say that I don't have any self-doubt, because of course I do. Of course I have uncertainty. Of course I don't know all the things, and I don't know all the atypical presentations of things, right? I trust myself to learn. I trust myself to figure it out. I trust myself to sometimes say, this is above my pay grade, and I'm going to refer you to somebody. That is stuff that I've learned over time. And you can learn it too. Reach out if you'd like to talk. If you and I haven't talked before, I offer a free discovery call, free one-on-one session, so that you and I can talk and I can find out what's going on with you. How can I help you? And we can talk about whether coaching is an appropriate tool to help you with the struggles that you're facing. You are not alone. Coaching is an evidence-based resource that really helps us to, untangle all these thoughts and emotions that are running around inside of us and dragging us down, right? The work that we do is real, and there's always more work than we will be able to do. That's just life. But it's also medicine. So being able to sift through the self-doubt and to heal it, right? So that we can develop that self-confidence. I trust myself to figure it out. I trust myself to do the right thing with what I know. It is life-changing. There is no epic efficiency class that will ever talk about self-confidence, right? There is no offering typically that comes to us from our systems that will really help to undo the ways that you think about the work that you do and what you owe to other people. This is internal work, but I am here for you. I love doing this work with physicians just like you. We can make this better together. You don't have to continue it alone. So reach out to me. If you'd like to send me a message, you can reach out to me at Megan, MEGAN, at healthierforgood.com. You'll see that in the show notes. You can set up a one-on-one call with me. I'd love to talk more. about how I can help. With that, my friends, have a great rest of your week. Let's let go of living in self-doubt and let's develop self-confidence instead. Until next time, take care.
Well, that's our show for today. Thank you as always for listening. To learn more about my coaching programs, head to www.healthierforgood.com. And if you love this podcast, please drop us a review on iTunes or support the show by clicking the link in the show notes. Until next time, take care.